Hi, my friend. So a question I get a lot is if I should pay off my mortgage. I got that. A couple guys posted that just today and yesterday on the channel. And this is an interesting phenomenon I want to talk about here. So what I've done is you can see I'm out here grilling. And so when I'm out here grilling, I got my little laptop and I said, I'm going to run a mortgage amortization schedule. And let's just crunch these numbers, shall we? Because I think it's of interest, actually. So I'm using a $300,000 30-year mortgage at 5%. Your monthly payment, if you think about your monthly payments, typically $500 for every $100,000 you borrow. That's just principal and interest, by the way. So in this case, your monthly payment is $1,600. So a little bit more than $500, but it's at 5%. You're not paying 5% money today. Anyway, all right. So the first year, your total payments they're going to be forever $19,325. That's going to be your payments every single year. Of that, in the first year, $4,400 goes to your principal, and $14,000, roughly $15,000, goes to your interest. So here's the way I kind of look at it. I say, okay, our mortgage payoff is $295,000. All right, so of the $295,000, $14,000, or actually $15,000 divided into $295,000 is our interest. That's 5%. So essentially, it's 5% is what it's costing because that's the interest. Lo and behold. But I'm only getting $44,260 in principal payoffs on a $295,000 investment. So I'm only getting 1.5%, essentially a return, if that makes sense. I mean, it's not truly a return, but you get it. You're dropping your principal by 1.5%. That's it. And it's costing you 5% to drop your principal by 1.5%. So let's go fast forward 10 years. Now we got $244,000 is our mortgage balance. That's our payoff. In that case, our interest we paid is $12,390. So we'll take $12,390, divide that into $244,000, and that's still 5% because that's the interest that we're paying, 5%. That's not going to change much. It does change towards the end. But in this case, my principal is $6,934. $6,934 divided into $244. And now I'm getting a 2.8% return in terms of equity. I built a 2.8% increase in my equity, but it cost me 5% to increase my equity by 2.8. You follow me? Now, let's fast forward to year 20. This is when it starts getting interesting. I have a $150,000 payoff. So I'm sitting there, I got $150,000 in cash, $150,000 I owe my mortgage. I could say I get $150,000, I could get 5% in investments. That'd give me $7,500. That's what I get. If I just invest that money, I get $7,500. And lo and behold, it cost me $7,900 in interest when I carry this loan. So I can pay off the mortgage, and I would save myself $400 because essentially I could invest that money at 5%. I get $7,500 back. Or I can just pay off the mortgage and I don't pay $7,900 in interest. Does that make sense? So essentially, it's pretty much a wash. It's $400 that I'm basically I'm on the hook for an extra $400 if I don't pay off the mortgage. But in this case, I actually increased my equity by $11,421 on a $151,000 payment. So now my equity is growing by 7.5%. Where my interest only costs me about 5.2%. So before, my equity is growing at 1.8, but it cost me 5%. Now my equity is growing at 7.5, but only costs me 5.2%. Does that make sense? So the issue here is, if I were to basically liquidate that $151,000 to pay off my mortgage, I would save $7,900 in interest. That is correct, without question. If I didn't liquidate the $150,000 and paid off my mortgage and I got 5%, I would earn $7,500. So again, that's basically a wash. Now I got to pay tax on that $7,500, so it's not quite a wash because I do got to pay tax. And if that money was in an IRA, I'd have to pay tax on the $151 coming out too. So you just kind of got to look at it a wash in that regard. But still, you got to take into consideration the tax consequences as well. But I get to keep my $150,000 cash in the portfolio growing at 5% without really having to pay tax if it's an IRA. If it's a non-IRA, it's different, but if it's an IRA, I don't have to pay tax on that yet. And I'm still building 7.5% equity in that account, essentially on my home. I'm increasing my equity by 7.5%, and it's only cost me 5% to do that. So now let's fast forward to year 25. Now I owe 85,000 on that, and I build my equity by 14,659. So 14,659 divided by 85,000, I'm increasing my equity here by 17.2%, and it cost me $4,667 to do that. 85.3. It costs me, again, 5.5% roughly. So roughly 5%. But I'm increasing my equity by 17%, and it costs me 5% to increase my equity. So that's how a mortgage works. You're paying 5% to increase your equity, just a tiny amount, based on the first 10 years. After that, though, it's like a steamroller, like the reverse Dave Ramsey effect. You're building equity bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger relative to the interest it's costing you. Yes, it's still costing you interest, don't get me wrong. But the question is, isn't that costing you interest? Could I get better interest outside of my account if I invested it? That's a good argument, but the actual argument, in my opinion, is how much equity am I building for the interest that it's costing. So again, in this case, I'm getting 17% equity for a 5% interest rate. I'm picking up, I'm throwing down pennies and I'm picking up nickels. Does that make sense? And that's a big deal. So that's a tough one there, because you're sitting there like, oh man, that monthly payment's killing me. But you still have that. You still have your $100,000 of principal of cash available, or $85,000, $120,000, whatever it is. You still have that available. That's also growing at 5% roughly, or 6% or 8%, whatever it is. And on top of that, you still are building equity at a huge clip relative to the interest that it costs. So your $150,000, which you're not using to pay off your mortgage, is growing at 5%. It's costing you 5% for your mortgage, so that's a wash. But you're on $150,000 because you're paying a monthly payment to your mortgage. You're building your equity at 8, 9, 10% clip, and so in that case, you're still out ahead by 8, 9, 10%. If you would have taken the $150,000 out and just paid off your mortgage outright, forget the tax consequence. All you're doing is you're just basically saying, I got no cash, by God's equity, and that's it. I mean, it's nice. You don't have a monthly payment anymore. I get that 100%. But is it worth it? It's to be cash poor and house rich. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it is. So it really depends on your cash flow. Now I get people are saying, yeah, but Josh, then you're no longer having that $19,000 a year of outflow for cash. I get that. You can use that for other things, like buy a new car, put new trees in it, something like that. I get that. But it's more than just meets the eye relative to how much I'm getting on my interest relative to how much I'm paying for interest, and how much I'm getting on my cash relative to how much I'm paying for interest. It really comes down to cash flow, comes down to equity that I'm gaining by putting money into the account versus cash flow versus interest that I'm paying. If cash flow is tight and I got lots of equity and I got lots of if cash flow is tight and I got abundance of low returning investments and CDs, I'm worried about the market. Yeah, it inherently makes sense to pay off the debt without question. But there's a lot going on there. It's not just as easy as you might think. Anyway, I'd love to hear your comments on that. So what do you think? If you had thoughts that said, man, you paid off your mortgage and you couldn't be happier, I'd love to hear if you had thoughts you said you didn't pay it off and it turns out to be a good investment because your market investment did better. Not only were you building nice equity, but you're also building nice equity in your accounts that you did not use to pay off the mortgage. So not only you build nice equity in the cash that was still invested, but you're building nice equity because you did not pay off the mortgage. I'd like to hear that too, or vice versa. I'd love to hear both sides. All right, we'll see you next time.